I think they're done in the short term, but let's also keep in mind that the Iranian foreign minister has about as much control over Iranian security policy as the municipal dog catcher does. The decision to retaliate or not is going to be taken in the office of the supreme leader and among the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. Generally speaking, what made last night's missile strikes interesting was usually when the Iranians retaliate, they want plausible deniability. This had the return address being Iran. There is no plausible deniability. When the real retaliation comes, and I think that will come months away, then I expect the Iranians aren't going to claim responsibility for it.
It will come months away. It may not be traceable back to the state. It could be some proxy. What form do you expect that retaliation to take?
Well, keep in mind that as we consider all the possible scenarios, it really highlights the fact that both the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps and their proxy, Lebanese Hezbollah, truly have global reach. In 1994, Hezbollah struck in South America. Hezbollah networks are very much at play in Western Africa. Simply put, I would be much more worried being a diplomat in Bangkok, Thailand, than in Beirut. Because usually when this sort of retaliation comes, it's where we're most soft and where we least expect it.
Okay, we already are hearing the Ayatollah continuing to say that American presence in the region is unacceptable, that they are a corrupt influence. And so he's not backing up what the foreign minister of Iran is saying at all about this, concluding the response. Given that, what should American companies who have a presence in the region be thinking about protecting their facilities and protecting their people?
Well, I mean, certainly anyone who's operating in the region should be in close coordination with the security forces which are operating in the countries in which they're working. So if you're in the Emirates, you should be in close contact with the Emiratis. One thing that can be said for many of the Arab regimes is that they have very professional, very competent security forces, and I'm sure they are going to be keeping track of any potential hostile Iranian actions.
How do you see right now the back and forth that has gone from Iraq and the United States in terms of threatened sanctions there and whether they're cooperating with the Iranians? What happens in some of these other players in the Middle East?
Well, the biggest concern among many of the states in the Middle East, Iraq accepted, is that the Americans might actually go in halfway, stir in the hornet's nest, and then leave them around to clean up the mess. With regard to Iraq, the situation's more complicated, all the more so after last night, because remember, these bases which the Iranians hit with ballistic missiles weren't American bases. They were Iraqi bases where some Americans were co-located. And so the Iraqis are now saying your response to the Americans violating our sovereignty is to do the exact same thing the Americans did. So the Iraqis are taking an attitude of pox on both your houses, which actually is quite consistent for the last decade.
Eamon Javers made the point that the president raised the idea of raising sanctions on Iran, and he asked the question, what's left to sanction? So I pose that question to you. What's left to sanction, or who else could the United States sanction as a way to get at Iran?
Well, with regard to many of the sanctions, one of those issues that could be brought up would be international air travel into Iran to isolate Iran further. We can talk about secondary sanctions. In many cases, those sanctions already exist. And when it comes from a business perspective, one of the reasons why French businesses, German businesses, Japanese businesses are upholding to the sanctions, even against the desire of their own diplomats and elected officials, is because, of course, companies answer to their shareholders rather than diplomats, and they're not going to risk multi-billion-dollar fines.